We live in somewhat bizarre and contradictory times. Despite the negative news cycle, it's easy to forget that we actually have it very good compared to our ancestors in history. The standard of medicine is very high these days. The standard of living is much higher than 100 years ago, say. Technology is beyond our belief. Only a few decades ago, we wouldn't believe we have iPhones and so on. We've also enjoyed relative peace on the global scale, as well as relative political freedom. However, despite all of this, you do see that many people up and down the country are somewhat depressed about the state of things now, as well as the future. Firstly, because we see a decline in the aforementioned qualities we now enjoy. On top of that, there's a massive crisis of meaning going on in the Western world, along with that a lack of unity, a loss of transcendent meaning in our lives, and a growth of materialistic, nihilistic, self-centered culture.
Listen, I'm like king of banter.
Bold statement.
What?
I'll tell you if
Do you
you're
like
king of
banter?
Yeah, I love banter.
Another major detachment modern man suffers from is a detachment from his cultural identity. So with that in mind, I'm going to read the opening quote of A Tale of Two Cities from one of our literary greats, Charles Dickens. Now this quote could be said of our modern times today. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. Now, while one could argue that this is just the nature of the human condition, to me it seems very specific to our bipolar age. Are things good, or are things bad? Are we happy collectively, or are we sad? In essence, I suppose we're both. We can see that we are much better off materially thanks to the hard work of our ancestors, yet we can also see that our present times are filled with lots of uncertainty and dark clouds loom on the horizon. And this raises the question, what are we to do in the future? Well, in this instance, man tends to work towards ideologies he finds they'll give him meaning and justice in the world. You see this here on your screen. Here you have a meeting of ideas, meeting in reality, with the leftist just screaming Nazi and a fella who's protesting mass immigration. I'm sure both of these fellas feel they're pursuing a course of justice unless they've taken a majorly narcissistic turn. But the point is, you're never really going to get justice in the world, and once we knew this quite well via our ancient tradition in the UK. Now, I'm not saying here that political opinions are never wrong or right. What I'm saying here is peace and justice in the world will never be found purely on the material plane. We need to return to something much simpler to give us orientation in this regard. That thing is peace. Why this is so essential is because it moves us away from the noise of the emotions and uncertainty and egoic identifications with ideologies and allows us to be calm and truthful. Second, whether you're a believer or not, this was part of our Christian tradition at one time. We were aware that the world was fallen, and henceforth the only way to counteract that was come to the Spirit in the here and now. Now, I'm not saying that you have to go to your local church and get down on your knees if you don't want to, but what I am saying is we need to open up to the spiritual dimension of life, whether that's spending time in nature away from the modern media, whether that's spending time with family, cooking, walking your dog, whatever it is that allows you to get out of the bipolar world that we're now living in. It's living from this centre of peace that will give us the orientation, the moral value system to deal with the complexities of modern life. On top of that, it allows us to make conscious choices around food we imbibe, the media that we decide to take in, the free time we have, and the mindset that we use to approach the challenges of modern life. What I'm saying here is if Western man is to survive the onslaught of globalism, materialism and nihilism, we're going to need a new way of life that's nourishing, positive for us spiritually, mentally and personally. As I've said before, I don't think that we can destroy globalist liberalism, but we can wait for it to collapse in on itself once its inner contradictions start to be more and more clear. It's at that point there will be an opportunity for a sort of civilizational rebirth that will allow us to go through a psychic change, something that brings forth a new way of life. This is why I believe Carl Jung's famous words about an individual coming over in neuroses are the same for us as a collective culture at the moment. Jung stated, "I have frequently seen people become neurotic when they content themselves with inadequate or wrong answers to the questions of life. They seek position, marriage, reputation, outward success of money, and remain unhappy and neurotic even when they have attained what they were seeking." Such people are usually confined within too narrow a spiritual horizon. Their life has not sufficient content, sufficient meaning. If they are enabled to develop into more spacious personalities, the neuroses generally disappears. This is why I believe we have cause for positivity when we look to the future. History has always been a cycle of deaths and rebirths, and when we look to the future now, we should be seeing that with all of the chaos going on, these are sort of like the birth pangs of a new age that we should embrace with calm, wisdom, and a look to our ancestors as well as to the future. These are just my thoughts, however. Do let me know what you think down below, and do consider subscribing to the channel.